So General Holmes, tell me, what does it mean for you and your lovely wife, Sarah, to be in New York on 9/11, on a day that you happened to be at the Pentagon 18 years ago?
Thanks, Joe. I mean, I think it is a solemn day, and we're honored to be here. We certainly weren't in New York, and so we don't want to presuppose what it was like to be a New Yorker on 9/11. But as you said, I was in the Pentagon in the D.C. area that day. And so it brings back a lot of memories for us. Today, the weather was kind of reminiscent of the weather we had that day, and I was thinking about that as well.
Could you walk us through where you were in the Pentagon that day and what happened after that strike on the Pentagon building? What did you and your team do?
Sure. I was in an office working, and somebody called and said, hey, come out and check the television, turn it on and watch. And we turned on the news and saw the first airplane hit the towers, and we had a discussion about it. I had a lot of pilots that worked for me, so we had our own theories about how could this possibly have happened. It hadn't really crossed our mind yet that it was an act of terrorism. And then while we were talking and watching, we saw the second one live on television, and we knew then that there was more to it. We talked about what we should do. We said, well, we should go back to work. And we went back to work and had been sitting there a few minutes when we felt a thump. The windows breathed on my office, and we knew something had happened at the Pentagon. We weren't exactly sure what had happened. But in an office with a lot of classified material around, we said, hey, let's take our time, put everything away the right way, because who knows how long it will be before we can get back in. We got our guys out of the office, had about 30 people there that worked.
But was there an alarm that went off telling people to evacuate the building or anything?
There really wasn't in that first part of it. I'm trying to remember. I think maybe there were some alarms going off later, but there really wasn't. And the Pentagon in those days hadn't been remodeled. And so we were living with the old systems, and the room I was in was one of the old beat-up rooms in the Pentagon. Part of it had been remodeled, and the airplane actually flew into a part that had just been remodeled, and so a lot of the spaces were empty, and that actually held down the casualties in the Pentagon because the airplane hit a space. There were folks working there, but it could have been much worse if the new part had been occupied already.
And how did you know to evacuate your office? Did you turn it because it was the news? What?
Well, when we came out the door, if you looked one way, there was smoke down that way. It was clear down that way. My guys wanted to go toward the smoke. I wanted to make sure all my guys were safe and out. And so we left the building, and we joined about 20,000 people that were out in the parking lot and on the grass, all trying to use their cell phones at the same time to be able to tell someone they were okay. It took Sarah and I about an hour for me to get a message through to her. Meanwhile, she had seen it on television and knew something had hit the Pentagon, but we had just moved to D.C., and so she didn't know exactly where I worked in the building, so she didn't know, looking at pictures, whether we were okay or not. Our two kids were in Fairfax County schools there. Our daughter was in the 7th grade, and we're able to get a note to her, your dad's okay. Our son was in 5th grade, and the principal there said, we're not going to tell him anything. You can sort that out when you come get him. And at the end of the day, it was hard to get home because the buses, public transportation all runs in the morning in D.C. and back out in the afternoon, and so nothing was running out. Eventually made it home in time to go pick up our son, and our 5th grader said, hey, Dad, I think something bad happened today. There's nobody here. There's something going on, and we talked about it as we walked home.